Welcome. I'm Kris Koslap, and I'm an electrician's mate first class in the nuclear power program of the United States Navy. And I'm here to talk to you about the Navy's nuclear power program. As you can see here, this is my former boat, the USS Kentucky. It's located in Bremerton, Washington. History on the Navy's nuclear power program. First, coming out of World War II, we were researching nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, but we were also researching nuclear power. In 1946, it was led by Admiral Hyman G. Rickover, who's what we consider as the godfather of the nuclear Navy. So from 1946 to 1954, the Navy spent 8 years of research and then constructed their first nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Nautilus. And it was commissioned in 1954. And it was the first submarine to ever circumnavigate the globe under nuclear power. The next year, as we were researching nuclear power, we also had to establish a training command so that people like myself could be trained on operating a nuclear reactor. So in 1955, the Navy Nuclear Power Training Command was established, and now is currently located in Charleston, South Carolina, and I will go over the school's program later on the slides. After that, we were trying to consider what other vessels that the Navy has could benefit from the Navy's nuclear power. So in the late 1950s, the United States Navy was beginning research on cruisers and aircraft carriers, and we established our first nuclear aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise, in 1961, and it was commissioned for 52 years until 2013. Now, all of the Navy's submarines and aircraft carriers are powered off of nuclear power. All right, so what is nuclear power? This is a common question that I get asked, and to describe it, I would need weeks, if not years, to describe everything about nuclear power. So in a nutshell, basically what we do, or what nuclear power is in the Navy, we operate on nuclear fission. So nuclear fission is where a neutron will escape from a uranium-235 atom and then go on to be absorbed by a uranium-235 atom and then create fission. So basically, once a neutron is absorbed by uranium-235, it then becomes uranium-236, then it becomes unstable, and then it will split off, and it does two things for us. One, it will create fission fragments, which would then rub up against other elements, creating heat. That heat is vitally important. Second thing is, those neutrons, or from that fission event, we'll get 2 to 5 neutrons per every fission event that will then go on and then get absorbed by other uranium-235 atoms, and then that's how we create that chain reaction. Now, if you have an uncontrolled chain reaction, you could then have a bad day. So we do two things with our reactor, basically two things that we do to help control the amount of chain reaction that we have. The first thing is control rods. So you have fuel rods that are made out of uranium-235, and then you have control rods that are made out of elements like boron or hafnium. Basically what these control rods do is absorb all the free neutrons, and basically the reactor, when the control rods are on the bottom, the reactor is effectively shut down. But once we withdraw the control rods out of the reactor, those neutrons will then go and create more fission, then be absorbed by the fuel, and thus that's how we control the amount of power that we are creating within the nuclear reactor. So the higher the control rod, the more nuclear power that we create. Second thing is we use water, which is our moderator, and basically that uses to thermalize neutrons. The previous slide, it's kind of incorrect because those neutrons are moving at a high rate of speed. So we have to thermalize those neutrons, basically slow them down to an energy level slow enough so that the uranium-235 nucleus, or the nucleus, can absorb that neutron. Because the previous slide before, those neutrons were moving way too fast. So if you take a look at the next slide, basically the neutron is going to escape out of the fuel cell, and then we have water in between each fuel cell channel, and basically they're going to collide with other hydrogen atoms because the hydrogen atom is the same size as a neutron atom, thus giving off that kinetic energy to help slow it down so that it could be reflected back into the fuel cell to create more fission. And that's how we also control the amount of fission that we produce in our nuclear reactor. So on the next slide, this is a basic nuclear power plant design. So this is not a Navy nuclear power design, but basically it's just showing an example of what a nuclear power plant looks like on the primary side. So you have your pump here, you have your reactor. The yellow rectangles represent the fuel rods, and then the black lines represent the control rods. And then you have the water that's in between acting as our moderator. And then also that water is then used to transfer the heat from the reactor to the steam generator, and we pump it through the whole system. Now, it's a pressurized water reactor, and the reason why that is because we have to raise the pressure in order to maintain the water as a liquid, because it gets really hot in the reactor. Fission produces a lot of heat. So when you raise pressure in a closed loop system, that boiling temperature of water is also going to go up. And that's how we maintain this water as a liquid at higher than 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. And then this water is going to transfer the heat to the steam generator, and then there's two separate water systems. So if we go to the next slide, this is a basic Navy nuclear power propulsion system. As you see here, this is the primary on the slide before, and this is the steam generator. The primary water is pink, and then the secondary system water is blue. That turns to yellow because it turns to steam. So this is open to the atmosphere, and then this maintains its pressure by being a closed loop. So that's how this water can turn in water into steam, and then this maintains stays as a liquid. So only the heat transfers from the primary plant to the steam generator. The liquids don't mix. That's why they're two separate closed loop systems. But the secondary system is vented to the atmosphere. So the water will then the water on the secondary side will get pumped into the steam generator, flash the steam, and then we use steam for two things in the nuclear power program. One, we generate electricity. So this is how we power the electricity throughout the whole submarine and the whole aircraft carrier. And basically these are the two turbines. One is for generating electricity, and one is for generating propulsion. So that's what the main turbine does, is it pretty much is connected to the shaft, and it helps the boat move forward and backwards depending on the direction that we need to go. So we're kind of like the gas pedal of the submarine or the aircraft carrier. And then once the steam is used from the turbine, it then gets exhausted through the main condenser, and then it turns into a subcooled liquid, and then we transfer the heat out using ocean water, because our submarines and aircraft carriers are located in the ocean, and ocean water is free, and there's abundance of it. So basically the ocean acts as our heat sink, and that's pretty much how the whole nuclear power plant works in a nutshell. So reasons why the Navy uses nuclear power. So it boils down to two things, and basically our nuclear power program was founded on submarines, because that was we had an issue with World War II submarines. World War II submarines were powered off of diesel engines, and that created two problems. One, it needed oxygen in order to create energy, basically propulsion and electricity. So the submarine, in order to get that oxygen, it either had to have a snorkel mask to raise above the ocean water, or if it wanted to go deeper, it had to kill the diesel engine and rely on battery powered alone. Well, they didn't have the sweet lithium-ion batteries that people now get to enjoy today in their laptops and cell phones. They had lead-acid batteries, which took up a lot of space for the amount of energy that it conserves. So, with nuclear power, we don't need oxygen to create energy. We need fission and water in order to create energy. So basically, instead of being underwater for about 8 to 12 hours at a time, we can effectively be underwater for long periods of time. Like for myself, I've been underwater like close to 3 months, like straight underneath the water doing super secret squirrely stuff. So instead of being limited by fuel of a nuclear reactor, we are then limited by food. And usually a submarine usually does a loadout for 90 to 120 days. Second thing is, with creating a power plant that allows the submarine to stay underwater, we also have to conserve space on board a submarine, because a submarine, even though it's 360 feet long and 33 feet wide, or for a boomer submarine, so they're 570 feet long and close to 40 feet wide, it's still a finite amount of space for what we need to use to complete missions for the U.S. Navy. So, with nuclear power plants, it's a very compact design. As in, It's very energy dense. And that's not only suitable for submarines, but it's also suitable for aircraft carriers, because all the fuel is contained within inside the nuclear reactor, and that does not take up a lot of space. Therefore, we don't need huge storage of fuel tanks on board of submarines and aircraft carriers. Therefore, that frees up space for like aircraft or other weapon systems or berthing or whatever we decide that we need that space for. The Navy now has more space due to the fact that their nuclear power propulsion system is very compact. So if you go to the next slide, we get to see how energy dense the nuclear power is. So this person right here is holding a uranium-235 pellet. So basically our fuel rods are stacked with these uranium-235 pellets. And that represents about a gram of uranium-235. Now, it's not radioactive because it hasn't undergone fission yet. But to compare a nuclear power of coal or natural gas, basically 1 kilogram of coal produces about 8 kilowatt hours of energy, and 1 kilogram of natural gas produces 12 kilowatt hours of energy. Now compare that to 1 kilogram of uranium-235, that produces 24 million kilowatt hours of energy once it undergoes fission. It's about 2 to 3 million times more energy, therefore electricity, out of that kilogram of uranium-235. That's enough to power downtown Portland for like a year. It's a lot of energy. Compare that to solar panels, which this is the building that I work in, the Edith Green Wendell Wyatt building. On top of it, it has 13,000 square feet of solar panels. But it only produces enough electricity for 3% of the building. Basically, you got to cover 33 city blocks in order to power that building just straight off of solar power. So, 24 million kilowatt hours of energy, that's like equivalent to 18.5 square miles of solar panels to create that much energy in a day, or you need 8,000 wind turbines to create that much energy in a year. So basically, that's a lot of energy for the amount of space that it takes up. Another good comparison to coal is that you need 4.4 tons of coal to produce enough electricity for one household for 1 year, but with 1 gram of uranium-235, you can power 2 households in a year of electricity. So it's very energy dense. Those are the 2 reasons why the Navy uses nuclear power for our submarines and aircraft carriers. So, as I said before, the most important thing about our nuclear power program is the training that I get to receive in order to operate our nuclear reactors safely. And throughout over 60 years of our history, we have had 0 nuclear reactor accidents, and we like to keep it that way. So basically, I'm going to go over the kind of training that we get to receive in the nuclear power program. So this is the schoolhouse located in Charleston, South Carolina. And this is where students like myself get to go and learn about nuclear power. So basically, our nuclear power program, we say it's a 2-year school, but that's because each school is 6 months with the exception of Mechanic A school, that's 3 months. And you get about 1 to 2 months of break time in between so that you can travel per each school. So this is the schoolhouse, it's called the Rickover Center. On the right side is A school, on the left side is Power School, and we have a prototype that is down the road off the river there in the Naval Weapons Station. So the first school is A school. Each school in the Navy has an A school associated with so that you can learn how to do your job. The nuclear power program works no differently. So as an electrician, this is where I got to learn about program logic control, electrical equipment, work on robotics, learn basic electricity. All of this is done at A school so that I can be a certified electrician. Same with electronic technicians. They get to be a certified electronic technician in terms of working with computers, computer programming language, and then for mechanics, they get to learn about tools and mechanical equipment as well. So we all get to be certified in our right. Once we graduate A school, we actually get basically 2 to 3 weeks of vacation time, and then we have to wait until we class up for Power School. So Power School, this is the meat and potatoes of the nuclear power program. Our program hinges on this school because this is where we get to learn about nuclear power in terms of the chemistry, physics, the math, radiation theory. All that is done in Power School, and this is a 6-month school. And this is probably the toughest school because this is really a lot of engineering condensed into 6 months. But it's definitely worth it because you get to learn a lot about nuclear power in terms of plant design, how we operate, and you get to know about a basic submarine nuclear power plant. So all of that is done in Power School. And then once you graduate Power School, you get to take that theoretical knowledge and then apply it to prototype. Now this is an old picture of prototype and we're waiting for new pictures. But basically we have two old submarines that we have decommissioned and then turned into a training platform so that students like myself can operate with qualified sailors under supervision to operate their first nuclear power plant. So I joined the Navy straight out of high school when I was 17. When I was 19 years old, I got to operate my first nuclear reactor at prototype. I was able to operate a nuclear reactor before I was able to rent a car. So basically this is a hands-on demonstrations. Now with the prototype, we get to operate in a lot of different ways. So not only do students get to operate a nuclear reactor under supervision, but we have like flight simulators that are custom designed for our nuclear power plant. So students can operate effectively a nuclear reactor, but it's controlled by computers. So it's kind of like an interactive display system where they get to work with computers, and it's like a mock nuclear power plant. Another thing is that we have like computers, and we play, instead of like Call of Duty, I like to call it Call of Prototype, where students get to walk around and operate the power plant via computer. So basically they'll have like instructions on one screen, and then they have a virtual simulator of a submarine on another screen, and they'll walk through it and then click on things and operate the power plant that way. And then what we're currently trying to roll out with is virtual reality headsets like Oculus Rift, where students are in like a 10-foot by 10-foot room, and then they get to simulate operating certain equipment and components at nuclear power school as well. So there's a lot of different ways where sailors who are trying to qualify to operate a nuclear reactor in the Navy, there's a lot of different ways where a student can learn so that they can benefit not only through the training program, but once they pass the board and graduate, they get to share that knowledge out in the fleet and become great propulsion plant operators. So this is a lot of training in a short amount of time, but basically you're going to be able to learn everything about a nuclear reactor and not only carry that within the Navy, but outside the Navy as well. So what this up? So the next slide is going to show the whole pipeline, kind of like a flow chart, is what we just refer to it in the Navy. So every future sailor, or every applicant that joins the nuclear power program in the Navy, that future sailor is then will get a pay grade of E3, which is the highest pay grade that you can join into the Navy. And then an enlistment bonus of $38,000 plus a $2,000 PT bonus. Basically, if you pass your initial PT test at Recruit Training Command, you get a $2,000 bonus for a total of $40,000 total. So that's your enlistment guarantees. Once the future sailor then ships off to boot camp, they will be at Recruit Training Command for about 2 months. And then once they go from Recruit Training Command, they go to A School. What's great about A School is once they graduate, you automatically advance to E4, and you become a Petty Officer third class in the United States Navy. And then once you graduate and you pick up E4, you get to go to nuclear power school for 6 months, and then prototype for another 6 months. And then you become a qualified nuclear propulsion plant operator, and then you'll be stationed on a carrier and submarine. And then usually by your 2-year point, you're eligible for a star re-enlistment. And this re-enlistment is awesome because not only will you get automatic advancement to E5, but you could get a re-enlistment bonus up to $100,000. And basically it only adds an additional 2 years of service if you re-enlist at your 2-year point of the Navy. So instead of having a 6-year obligated service, you then have an 8-year obligated service. Also, with our nuclear power program, students can apply for different officer programs, mainly the Naval Academy and STA 21 program throughout their schooling, and then once they're out in the fleet, they can apply for an STA 21 program while they're out in the fleet. Now what I've seen is for the STA 21, which stands for Seaman to Admiral program, basically going from enlisted to officer, Usually about 60 to 80% of the people that are selected are in the nuclear power program. And then they become nuclear propulsion plant officers in the Navy as well. So what's in it for you? The reason why, these are kind of like the reasons why I joined the nuclear power program, but they're not just limited to this. But basically, the couple of things I'll highlight out of the what's in it for you is that you get the ability to learn complex subjects in a short amount of time. And that's probably the biggest benefit, is that you get to learn how to learn. And I usually apply that to every aspect in my life, not just with nuclear power, but when it comes to learning computers or working on car engines or picking up a hobby, especially like making a face mask. I'm able to read an instruction manual or learn about it on YouTube and then replicate that product, and do a pretty good job on it. So basically, I get to learn how to learn, and that's something I get to take with me for the rest of my life. Another thing is that I have experiences that will open up new doors for an excellent career in the Navy. Like, I got to be a nuclear field coordinator and talk about the nuclear power program to a lot of people in the Washington, Oregon, California area, as well as Idaho and Nevada, basically the region that I'm in NTAG Portland. And I get to talk to students and college people about our nuclear power program. It has been awesome, and I wouldn't change it for the rest of the world. I am glad I'm in the position that I am today, but I would not have been able to be there if it wasn't for the nuclear power program. Also, you get to set up an awesome career after the Navy as well. So instead of me going out to get jobs, I have people coming to me to get jobs because of the training that I have in the Navy's nuclear power program. And that's a nice benefit as well. Last but not least, you get to do cool stuff. This is a test missile that I got to be on the USS Kentucky for. And then afterwards, we got to see the video. A lot of people thought this was a UFO, but this is basically a test missile that we launched outside of California. And then we had a photographer be able to take it. So you get to do cool stuff and be a part of cool things in the U.S. Navy so it's definitely really awesome. And I'm glad I got to be a part of that. And if you have any questions, here's my contact information. I'm always ready and available, and I hope that you will consider joining the Navy's nuclear power program.